Hello, and thank you so much for tuning in from wherever you are in the world for this session of the Atlantic Council's Veterans Advanced Energy Week. I hope that you were able to join us for an exciting conversation that just concluded with Indiana Senator Mike Braun. My name is Jennifer Gordon, and I am the Managing Editor and Senior Fellow for Nuclear Energy Policy at the Atlantic Council Global Energy Center, and I will be the moderator for this session. I am pleased to be joined today by an esteemed panel as we discuss the role of nuclear energy in achieving net zero goals both at home and abroad. Before we get started, just a few notes. This event is on the record and we are currently live streaming on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We encourage you to post about what you hear today and to share on social media using the hashtag VetsEnergyWeek and by tagging us at AC Global Energy and Vets_Energy. If you would like to participate in our conversation today, we encourage you to submit your questions in the Q&A portal located at the bottom of your screen at any time during the event, and I will try to incorporate them as appropriate. Please note, however, that only those directly engaging via the Veterans Advanced Energy app will be able to submit questions. Today, we'll be talking about the role of nuclear energy in reaching net zero by 2050, and also addressing the relationship between the nuclear energy sector and US military veterans. To frame our conversation today in keynote remarks, I am delighted to introduce the Honorable Joyce Connery, Chair of the Defense Nuclear Facilities Safety Board. Thank you so much for being here today, Joyce. The floor is yours.
Thanks for having me, Jennifer. So I want to thank you for this opportunity to talk briefly at the start of this panel on the role of nuclear energy in net zero by 2050 for Veterans Advanced Energy Week. Since I'm not currently working in nuclear energy per se, nor am I myself a veteran, I pondered if I should decline the offer, but it's really difficult to say no to Jennifer Gordon, especially when it's a topic that I love, which is both nuclear energy and veterans. As I noted, I myself am not a veteran, but I happen to be married to one. And I married him while he was an NCO in the Army and watched his transition to the Air National Guard and finally out of the service into the private sector. With each step, the PT got easier to non-existent, but the rest of the transition was a lot more difficult. Now, as a leader in the federal government at the Defense Nuclear Facilities Safety Board, I employ a significant number of veterans and reservists. Unfortunately, many of them are nuclear Navy. Just kidding. When I began my job at the Defense Nuclear Facilities Safety Board, though, I did note that the culture was similar to that of naval reactors at the Department of Energy, which had its pluses and minuses, and it required adjustments by all parties in order for us to be able to work well together. So I thought that given my experience that I'd kick off today talking briefly about the importance of climate and energy work, and then focus on mission and culture, given the specific purpose of this week-long event. I'm not going to dwell too long on the role of nuclear because you have some heavy hitters on this panel who will be far more eloquent than I am on the topic. They are folks on the field, and I'm merely a rabid fan in the bleachers at this point. But I do want to talk to you a little bit about conflict, war, and climate change. It's clear that the global temperature is rising and that climates are being impacted. While there's not a direct correlation between climate change and conflict, there is the immutable fact that as resources become scarce, conflicts soon follow. Those resources may be fossil fuels, water rights, or land. Overfishing can cause maritime conflicts, for example, and severe droughts have contributed to substantial armed conflicts across the globe. Rising temperatures and arid farmlands lead migrants to move to overcrowded cities and climate refugees to cross borders. Our soldiers, sailors, and airmen have been involved in armed conflicts all over the world that had their origins in some way in that competition for scarce resources. So why do I start with that? Because those of you who are watching, who are interested in moving from the military into civilian jobs, likely didn't join the military for those fantastic paychecks and the predictable schedules. Am I right? You joined because you were called to join, because you believed in defending American ideals, and because you had a sense of duty and honor. Working on the most pressing problems of today that may create the greatest conflicts of tomorrow seems like a great fit for those of you who are transitioning out of a career in the military. So as you consider your next career, you probably need to stop and think about what kind of organization you want to work for. What are their ideals? What's their mission statement? If you are working for a private company, part of the goal is to optimize shareholder value. It just is. Are you okay with that? Why else are they in business? What are their core values? Do they align with yours? I took some time and I looked up the mission statements of some of the companies that are here today. Most of them talked about addressing energy problems, providing clean, safe, reliable energy sources. Some of them talk specifically about climate. Some of them talk about improving the quality of life and human health. As you consider your next transition, I encourage you to look at these mission statements and the core values of the companies and organizations to which you are applying. Even if the paycheck is bigger, chances are that you, because of who you are and your core values, are not going to want to work for a company that doesn't hold the same values. Finally, I wanted to touch upon culture. When you're looking for a new position or looking to hire somebody for a new position, there are three things that matter. Do I want the job? Am I qualified for the job? Am I a good fit for the job? And the person who's recruiting you is asking those same three questions. For the first bucket, do you want the job? You might not know for sure until you've had the first interview or two, until you've spoken with other people who are there. In the second bucket, you have a skill set based on your experience that will be in demand for many companies. You likely have leadership skills, technical skills, organizational skills, just based on your military and career and training. But you may need help to talk to the civilian managers, hiring managers, and translate those skill sets into something that they can understand and look at for their company. And there's a lot of resources out there on the web that will help you to do that. And I hope that Energy Week helps you to look at those resources as well as you make the journey. There may be some skills that you don't yet have, but that you could acquire through training. That's how you got your skills for your MOS after all. But finally, the fit is also key. It's not only do you fit from the perspective of the person who's hiring you, but are they a good fit for you from your perspective? The culture is going to be different from what you've experienced in the military. You may be frustrated by the pace of work, which may be slower. It certainly is transitioning from military to government. You may be confused as to why there are so many meetings and why decisions are often relitigated. You may find that organizational charts aren't as clear-cut or that the atmosphere isn't as formal. We may wince when you call us sir and ma'am, but we also wince when you're too direct. In other words, it may chafe at first. Your colleagues may have different prime motivators for what they do. Not wrong, just different from yours. And potential employers, you need to evaluate your candidates based on a wide experience base and differing skill sets. Recognize, for instance, that an NCO has had a significant amount of responsibility for personnel and equipment, but that doesn't translate neatly into the jobs you may have for them. Managers will need to work with service members to revise communication styles, but only after they've articulated mission objectives, responsibilities, and set expectations clearly. Evaluations, for instance, in the military are not just pro forma exercises. They help service members understand that they are on track to meet their objectives. Consider what supports you have available for your veteran employees, perhaps considering setting them up with a running mate, particularly another veteran who can help them navigate the environment and model the skills that may be needed for the job, similar to how they learned in the military. I've had these conversations with my staff over the years, and I've had to adjust my leadership style. I tend to be more Socratic in my leadership methodology and suggest options to be discussed. I probably drive them crazy sometimes because they just want to be told in what direction to point the ship and be left alone. But like learning and adapting to any other culture, there is a give and take here as well. But the results speak for themselves. A diverse workforce that includes our men and women from the armed services can address issues, communicate to a wider audience, and lead to more creative solutions in the workplace. These men and women trained to save, protect, and serve our nation. And in the energy workforce, they can help save, protect, and serve the planet and all who inhabit it. So thank you for this opportunity to give opening remarks, and I look forward to hearing the discussion.
Joyce, thank you so much for such incredibly thoughtful remarks and for highlighting the importance of mission-driven work. I think these are words to live by, not just for veterans, but for all of us. Thank you also for highlighting the role that U.S. military veterans can play in bringing their knowledge and skills to the nuclear energy sector. So I'd like now to move to our panel discussion. It is my distinct honor to introduce our lineup of speakers. I would like to welcome Dale Atkinson, Chief Operating Officer and Chief Nuclear Officer of NuScale and a Navy veteran, Bentina Chisholm-Terry, Senior Vice President, Region External Affairs and Community Engagement, Georgia Power Southern Company, Caroline Cochran, Founder and Chief Operating Officer of Oklo, Chris Fenley, Director of Commercial Development for Terrapower and also a Navy veteran, Jeff Harper, Vice President for Strategy and Business Development, X Energy, and Marilyn Cray, Vice President of Nuclear Strategy and Development, Exelon. So I would like to start by talking a little bit about the role of the existing fleet in decarbonizing the power sector. And Bentina, I'd like to turn to you first because Georgia Power is building a nuclear reactor, the Vogtle Power Plant, which will be the first domestic nuclear reactor built in decades. What can you tell us about the existing fleet and its role in decarbonizing the power sector?
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening. And it's a pleasure to be here today with such an esteemed panel. So currently, nuclear is an emission-free technology that really accounts for more than 55% of the carbon-free generation that we have across the United States. So for Southern Company in 2020, the company's capacity resource mix was about 23% coal, 44% gas, and 30% carbon-free and neutral resources. Oftentimes we talk a lot about the new nuclear that is coming online with Vogtle 3 and 4, but that number includes our current nuclear fleet, Vogtle 1 and 2, which are over 2,400 megawatts that power about 600,000 homes, and Hatch units 1 and 2, which are about 1,800 megawatts. And this is even quite different from what the company's resource mix will be in from 2007, that was what we've come from, to 2025. We'll have continued growth in renewables and battery storage and solar and wind. And of course, we'll bring on 2 new nuclear units. So by 2025, our carbon-free or neutral assets will be about 45% of our energy mix, with 12% coming from our nuclear plants. So the Vogtle units are expected to provide customers with a carbon-free energy source for the next 60 to 80 years and play a significant role in our company's plan towards decarbonization. And an important thing to note about those Vogtle units is that we often think of them as Georgia Power's units. They're actually the state of Georgia's units. So Georgia Power owns roughly 45% of the Vogtle units, both 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 that are coming online. And the other units are owned by other companies within Georgia that produce electricity: Oglethorpe Power, MEAG, which is municipals, and of course, Dalton Utilities. So they're important partners for us. As of right now, Unit 3 is 99% complete. We've had hot functional testing, which is really bringing all of the systems in the plant up to service except for fuel load. So our next step will be fuel load. And that unit should come online in the second quarter of 2022. And then Unit 4 which should come online in first quarter of 2023. And we are now at 93% of the total project being complete. It's a wonderful thing for us and for our country. These are only new nuclear units being built in the United States. When it's complete, the whole Vogtle plant, that's Vogtle units 1 through 4, will be the largest nuclear energy facility in the United States and will be able to power more than 1 million homes and businesses. So it'll be a combined 4,400 megawatts. So the process is going well. We've announced a recent change in budget and change in schedule. But I'd also like to remind everybody that in the middle of building the first new nuclear plants in the United States in over 30 years, we had Fukushima, which impacted the ability to acquire our license for about 10 months. We had to reconstitute a nuclear workforce after 30 years of not building new nuclear plants. We saw our chief partner, Westinghouse, go into bankruptcy. Who would have thought that that would happen with Westinghouse? And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the current COVID-19 pandemic, which is still ongoing. So we're proud of the units, we're proud of the new in-service dates, and we know that the units will be completed. And now we're at 99% completion on Unit 3, and we're happy about that. So we'll see these through the completion, and they will be a great source of carbon-free energy for us in Georgia.
Bentina, thank you so much. That's a fantastic overview of where you're at right now with Vogtle. And I think because we can't overemphasize enough just how important the current fleet is, I want to stay with this topic for another moment And Marilyn, I want to turn to you and ask, the current fleet is crucial to decarbonization, but it's also faced challenges, as we know, especially in economic competition with other energy sources. So, what are some policy steps that would make the current fleet a little bit more economically competitive?
Hi, Jennifer. The policy, any policy incentives will certainly impact the revenue side of of the equation. But also, just as a reminder, the industry has been working on the cost side of the equation, and that is to reduce our overall costs. And the latest numbers, as far as the average cost for a nuclear power plant, which includes the fuel, the O&M, and the capital, is $30 a megawatt hour. So that, while that may seem low, it is not competitive in certain markets. And so for all of the new developers, again, I recognize that different markets globally and also even here domestically are different, but that's the challenge. It's not unique to the current fleet. And as I speak, my colleagues at Exelon are working feverishly with legislatures to enact policy in the state of Illinois that will save 4 units of our 21 that have been identified for an early shutdown. And these are units that are being shut down purely for economic reasons. They are well run, well maintained as measured by all of the NRC regulatory and other financial measures. And each of these 4 units has also received NRC approval to extend the license, but nevertheless, they are not competitive even at those low rates that I mentioned. The state level policies, similar to those enacted in New York, New Jersey, and Illinois for a different set of our plants, have been effective in staving off the early shutdown or the premature shutdown for plants. However, federal level and broader market reform policies that recognize the reliability, the resiliency, and the flexibility of nuclear power are needed to meet the decarbonization goals. And I would assert that nuclear does not compete with renewables in the decarbonization solution, but rather it complements renewables by serving as an enabling foundation for their deployment. So any policy, whether it's at the state market or federal level, must provide certainty to the operators. One is a transparent formula for how any credit is going to be assigned to the output of a nuclear power plant. The duration of that credit, sometimes the duration is being talked about as 2 years right now. That's very difficult looking at the decision timeline or horizon for nuclear power plant operators. We are making decisions today regarding the investments that we'll be making for the long-term operation of these plants. Similarly, it's incredibly important for the retention of personnel. So all of these are basically, I think the conversations are going in the right direction right now. And I'm also keenly aware, it is not lost on me, the fact that my job is looking at the future of nuclear and how can I reconcile that when my colleagues are trying to save well-run, low-cost plants. My belief is that eventually common sense will prevail and the recognition of nuclear in the overall solution for decarbonization will be appreciated, and that will present itself in the form of the policy changes needed.
Marilyn, thank you so much. And thank you for also noting nuclear energy's ability to pair well with renewables. And I want to get back to that in just a moment. But first, we've talked a lot about decarbonizing the power sector and nuclear's role in that. But Jeff, I'd like to turn to you and ask for your thoughts on the applications for nuclear beyond power. So to what extent is X Energy looking at things like hydrogen production, desalination, process heat, and more?
Thanks for the question, Jennifer. I really appreciate it. Happy to be part of this great panel today. Just taking a step back, X Energy is an advanced reactor technology development company, and we're developing several products, but our primary product is the XE100, which is an on-grid reactor solution. It's a pebble bed, high temperature gas reactor, and our standard plant being 4 modules is 320 megawatts electric. To answer your question, advanced reactors like the XE100, they're perfect for non-traditional applications for nuclear power, especially beyond producing electricity. For example, our XE100 standard plant produces steam as well as electricity, but the steam temperatures are 565 degrees centigrade and pressures at 16.5 MPa. So that makes really good for producing, heat for industrial applications, not only desal, but also district heating. And then, of course, we're looking at hydrogen production. We are pursuing these applications, globally. In fact, before closing out here, just want to mention that another key attribute that gets overlooked sometimes because it is not traditional for the XE100 and a lot of other advanced reactors is a capability of coupling with wind and solar, not renewable energy sources by load following. And in our case, we can go from 100% power to 40%, back to 100% at 5% per minute.
Jeff, thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating. Caroline, I want to go to you to stay on this theme of pairing with renewables. You're building a fast fission reactor, the Aurora Powerhouse, which is just a beautiful design for our audience. If you haven't checked it out, please do. Caroline, can you speak to the ability of a fast fission reactor to ramp up and ramp down quickly and how that gives it the ability to pair well with renewables?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jennifer. And thanks for highlighting our facility. We've really designed the building to hopefully be something that a community wants in their area, as opposed to kind of maybe is indifferent or doesn't want in their community. And so it's something we're excited about and really working towards is being a point of pride. And I think that is something that's similar to renewables. And you might notice too on that building, even though those are conceptual renders, we've included solar panels. And it's not actually a trivial amount. Some people look at it as like, oh, that's a pittance. But we're talking 100 kilowatts here. So it's not nothing to put back on the grid. And actually the orientation of the slant of the A-frame is supposed to be ideal, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, in the latitudes we're looking at for those solar panels. So a lot of thought went into that. Hopefully the beauty, but also functionality. And I'd say there's another thing too about our business model just accommodates and works similarly to renewables, which is, selling PPAs and just selling the power in that way, which is how renewables do it. But specific to the question about the technology, yes, fast fission has many attributes we're excited about, including consuming waste, but especially to your point, I can also load follow or ramp up and down. And to Jeff's point just before, there are other reactors that can do that too. So even light water reactors do some amount of load following, and to my understanding, they do that in France regularly, and even I think others. And this just is on a really fast time scale. So what we're able to do, so it enables load following on a very responsive fashion, whether that's with renewables or just grid demand. So when we're looking for us, our customers look like, oftentimes smaller grids, and we're working with a small plant to start. That's a crucial aspect, is being able to meet demand dynamically.
Caroline, thank you so much. I want to talk a little bit about the energy transition, which obviously we've started talking about in, this notion of transitioning to clean power. But Dale, I want to turn to you because NewScale has been talking about siting SMRs and retired coal plants for many years now. And the concept, I think, really makes a lot of sense, especially from the standpoint of the energy transition and bringing clean energy jobs to communities that have relied on the fossil fuel industry for generations. Can you say more about why this also makes sense from a technical standpoint?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. So first, I am Chief Operating Officer and Chief Nuclear Officer for NuScale Power. Very happy to be able to address all the veterans out there. They're trying to decide what they're going to do next and how they're going to get there from where they're at. As a Navy veteran, I remember those challenges of figuring out what I wanted to do next in my life. And so I support all your efforts and as you plan your future. Just to remind you, for our facilities, we adjust the number of modules based on what a customer requires. And that's actually why our first project is at 6 modules and not 12, because that's what a customer wanted for their total generating capacity. But we offer plants from 4 to 12 modules, providing up to 924 megawatts of carbon-free electrical production. And obviously, as other speakers have mentioned, we can operate and support intermittent power operations such as wind and solar, and have found in our discussions that we are actually an enabler for those organizations or areas that want to bring in more renewables. We make that much more possible by providing the option for both base load and intermittent load following. So you mentioned we have been looking at coal replacement for years, and that's true. And in fact, one of my first experiences with NuScale prior to becoming an employee was participating on a utility advisory group, and had discussions about what sort of sizing would be appropriate for coal plant replacement. I would suggest for all of those that are trying to figure out what to do next, there are a lot of resources out there. If you go to our website, we have been looking at coal and hydrogen, district heating, desalination. There are a lot of papers out there. You can just download it and take a look at it. They're on the website, and it'll help you get educated on the different options that are out there. But the bottom line is, for coal, by 2030, about 73 coal plants are expected to retire, which is a loss of about 38 gigawatts of capacity. That's baseload capacity. And similar to the recent experience in Texas, having reliable baseload power is really important. And so we believe that small modular reactors are a key to providing a carbon-free solution for that. We've also found that what makes sense with regards to the coal plants is a lot of that infrastructure can actually be repurposed. So when we've taken a look at them, we see items like transmission, cooling water system, steam and water, warehousing, buildings, all are easily adaptable to our design. And typically it's worth about $100 million in infrastructure costs. Additionally, we looked at the staff at coal plants and really determined that the bulk of them we can cross-train and have them operate a NuScale facility. A very easy transition, I think. So what that ends up doing is it retains employed workforce in that area. When a coal plant leaves, it can decimate the economy locally. And what we believe is that NuScale can provide those opportunities to keep that workforce employed and provide carbon-free electricity that will support the community with a lot of good income, jobs, and power for many years to come.
Dale, thank you so much. And, I really think that this idea is just fascinating. And I want to stay on it for one more moment and turn to you, Chris, because earlier this summer, Terrapower and Pacificorp announced plans to site the Natrium demonstration at a retiring coal plant in Wyoming. So can you give us a sense of what this has meant for Terrapower and for your partners, and also for the state of Wyoming?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer. We're really excited at Terrapower. Last year, we won a DOE partnership award to build our demonstration reactor. And as you said earlier or just last month, we announced that we would be siting that in Wyoming. For Terrapower, it's our first demonstration of our concept. And so we will show both the cost and schedule aspects of building our demonstration, doing that on time and on budget. We also think we'll demonstrate grid level storage. So the Natrium design has a reactor which will run at 100% power at all times, but we'll have a molten salt storage system that will ramp up and down to support and integrate with renewables. And we'll be demonstrating really gigawatt level storage on the grid in Wyoming. For Pacificorp, our partner, they have a retiring coal site. As Dale mentioned, there are a number of infrastructure aspects that can be reused, as well as a highly trained workforce. And so we're really excited to be able to take advantage of that. And Pacificorp is really excited that they'll continue to have a local resource in that region. And then it provides carbon-free, flexible generation to their system. As Marilyn said, nuclear really has to integrate with renewables in the grid of the future. And that's what we see at Terrapower and our Natrium design and our storage system is really meant to complement renewables and make sure that we still provide a solid base power system and power on demand when people need it. When they turn their lights on, the lights will come on. But we'll also have a large amount of renewables on that grid of the future. And then finally, for the community, as you said, we'll be siting in Wyoming at a retiring coal plant. That they have a tremendous amount of skills and a supportive community that has powered this country for the last 50 to 100 years. And we look forward to working with those communities. Nearly a quarter of all nuclear plant operators are former veterans themselves. I'm a Navy nuclear veteran, submarine officer myself. And I have lots of people that I worked with in the Navy who now operate at these nuclear power plants at places like Maryland talked about. So I think that it's a real win-win-win for all parties involved.
Chris, thank you so much. And, it's been really great to hear about some of these advanced reactor designs. But I'm also really interested in the relationship between the current fleet and the next generation of nuclear energy technologies. So, Bentina, something that we've talked about is the notion of the current fleet as a bridge to the next generation. And it also seems at the same time that there are differences even between a newer light water reactor like Vogtle and some of the older reactors in the domestic fleet. So how have light water reactors continued and are continuing even now to innovate?
Yeah, it's really important to point out that after the first generation of nuclear plants were completed in the United States, it's not as if the nuclear industry just kind of sat on its hands. And what the industry really decided to do was to take the lessons learned from building those first generation of plants and figure out how they could improve that with the next generation of plants. And actually, I think there were a couple of iterations in between. And it was a great coming together of the nuclear industry. I'd remind everybody too, because it's difficult to remember it now. This was 17 years ago. I was a general counsel of Southern Nuclear, which operates all of Southern Company's nuclear fleets. But there was actually 17, 18. I remember I had a chart in my office of the 17, 18 nuclear reactors that were going to be built across the United States. The really neat thing about that is they were based on two particular models that were going to be very, very similar. And like I said, would be innovations from the previous plans. One of the first things was they were moving to digital controls as opposed to analog. Makes complete sense. The world had changed and looked very differently at that technology. The analog technology relied a lot on light bulbs, which sometimes a light may be off because the bulb is out, or it could be out because it needs to be out. So that's why that's so incredibly important from a safety perspective. The safety systems also in the first generation of plant required pumps and valves to support cool down in the case of an emergency. And the new technology actually is a passive system. So think that we allow gravity now to control that water. And it also means that the operator has little to no actions that they have to engage in during a safety shutdown type of process or something like that. There's a better safety features, more passive safety features in the design basis. And what that really means is that brings down by order of magnitude what could happen during some type of event compared to our current fleet. And then there are also other advances in terms of nuclear fuel that we're working on improving. There's advanced accident tolerant fuel, which is being tested right now at Southern Nuclear in our current fleet of nuclear plants. And then the last piece, which some of the folks have mentioned, is that load following capability. This This could be paired with renewables, even for our light water reactors, so they could ramp down when a peak for solar comes. We're not sure we're going to be able to do that, not because technologically you can't, but for right now, our nuclear plants run at what we call the bottom of the stack. So they're the cheapest units that we have. And we're planning for them to run, at 93% capacity factor and really only come off for refueling outages every 18 months or so. But all of those things are just important to know that the nuclear industry continued to innovate with these designs for the new kind of baseload nuclear reactors we're building, as well as the innovations that the panelists before me have already been talking about.
Tina, thank you so much. This was fascinating. And I actually want to stay on this theme for just another moment and continue to talk about innovation in the current fleet. Marilyn, Exelon is also no stranger to nuclear innovation. So can you tell us how Exelon is thinking about and participating in the next generation of nuclear technologies?
And so as you can imagine, our primary focus is, of course, the continued safe operation of our 21 units. However, back in, I think it was late 2016, we adopted an official strategy related to how were we going to engage and be involved in the SMR and advanced reactor work that was ongoing, and that is included to actively engage with the developers of these new designs, four of whom you have here on this webinar. And we did it for two reasons. The first reason was to share our operational insights with these new developers. As Bentina mentioned, the current fleet, through lessons learned, through innovation, has made significant changes to our physical plant and to how we operate it. So there's a tremendous opportunity to share that with these new developers so as to enable the efficient and safe maintenance, operation, and also the refueling of these plants, and also to share the innovation. And so a nuclear plant, it's kind of interesting. If you're interested in visiting one of the current reactors, you can see the entire spectrum of technology. There is still some analog controls in our control room that look as if you're in some kind of 1960s movie. But then we also are using artificial intelligence and digital twins, robotics and drones in that very same power plant. So a lot of those innovations we were able to kind of retrofit onto our unit. So it's certainly sharing those things with the new developers. And then also that list of things that we wish we could have done, but because there are certain things since the plant is already built, we can't implement, share those great ideas with somebody whose plant is still on paper. So that was the first reason, and that was, again, to help inform and share the lessons learned with these new developers. The second reason is related to some of that we've talked about already, and that is we see these new designs being sold to a set of future owners well beyond the Southern companies and the Exelons, the existing large utilities. And they'll be using these new technologies for some of the applications we've talked about: hydrogen production, desalination, district heating, whatever. And so that customer base will include large manufacturing companies, maybe some smaller municipalities, and just entities that are out there, again, different from the current operators. And so by partnering with the reactor developers, we see a business opportunity to provide or offer operational services alongside the developer offering the physical unit to appeal to this broader customer base, some of whom might otherwise be reluctant to enter into the world of nuclear ownership and operation. So this is to really help usher in these new technologies to a much broader customer base domestically and globally.
Marilyn, thank you so much. And something that I also want to bring up in this conversation is the idea of funding. And especially, I'd like to talk a little bit about public-private partnerships. So Jeff, if I can go back to you, X Energy, along with Terrapower and GE Hitachi, is an award recipient in the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program. Could you talk a little bit about the reactor that you're building as part of that program and how cost sharing and public-private partnerships will help get reactors to demonstration?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Public-private partnerships are vital, I think, for the first wave of these SMR deployments. I believe that the U.S. government assistance is really justified because, without a robust, large-scale, healthy domestic marketplace for nuclear, we are going to be hard pressed to actually deploy our SMRs. So it's really important that we have a domestic marketplace that's healthy so that we can export. Of course, once we export our technology and we do it at large scale, everybody wins. The United States economy goes up and companies do very well. Having said that, mentioned before that the XE100 is our bread and butter product at X Energy, and we benefited from these public-private partnerships. You mentioned the Advanced Reactor Development Program. Last year, as Chris also mentioned here, the U.S. Department of Energy selected X Energy as well as Terrapower out of some 37 competitors and what was at stake was the DOE was looking to contribute 50% of our project costs. So in our case was $1.2 billion. And our project is planned to be in Washington State. We are partnering with Energy Northwest on this project, and we're looking to deploy in 2027. So from nuclear timescales, that's right around the corner. The other public-private partnership that we benefited from is the U.S. Department of Defense. We have a mobile microreactor. We call it XE1. It's a baby reactor, 1 megawatt. Last year, U.S. DoD down selected X Energy as well as BWXT out of 9 serious competitors to basically benefit from a potential of a 300 megawatt DoD demand through 2040. So either X Energy or BWXT or both companies will have a shot at that a particular market. And I guess the bottom line in it all is that this really primes the pump for worldwide deployment and achieving our net zero goals.
Jeff, thank you so much. And something that I want to pick up on from both your remarks and also I think nearly everyone, if not everyone, has said, we've all been throwing out the dates and years. And I want our audience to really pick up on the fact that the years and the dates that we're mentioning in this conversation are really for the most part in the 2020s. And so this idea that nuclear is not going to be here in time or advanced nuclear is not going to be here in time, or even a new reactor and the current fleet's not going to be here in time to make a difference, I think is not the case. So if our audience takes away one thing, maybe it's that sense of urgency and that it's really now. But I do want to stay for another moment on the public-private partnership discussion. And Caroline, I want to go to you because in June, Oklo announced a $2 million cost share award from DOE supported by the Technology Commercialization Fund. And as part of this program, Oklo is matching $1 million in funds in a public-private partnership with DOE and Argonne. So what will this funding enable your company to do? And why do you think that public-private partnerships are especially effective for funding nuclear projects?
Yeah, it's an interesting position that Oklo is in, and maybe confusing to some, but our company actually hasn't taken a single dollar of DOE funding. But we have worked so much with DOE and appreciated work with them in so many ways. So starting in 2017, we signed a memorandum of understanding with DOE, and that was about siting and fuel. And really, we've marched towards those topics over the years. So in 2019, we were awarded a site use permit for our first deployment there in Idaho. And in 2020, we were awarded fuel material for our first reactor. So utilizing those, we were able to actually submit the first ever advanced fission license application, going straight to a combined construction and operating license, which was accepted for review by the NRC, the regulatory body, last year. So we're now a year into a 3-year long licensing process, at the end of which you're granted the ability to start, building and operating. So we're moving right along. And so to your last point of it's not many years into the future, it's happening now. That's really true. We've got a site, we've got fuel, and we've got an application under review for a construction operation. So it's really happening fast. And then the latest announcement, which you just highlighted, is yet another example of where we believe we can work with DOE to fund work at the national labs, which has cross-cutting benefits and open source kind of benefits as well. So our next project is really trying to make sure that fuel supply is made more secure. Obviously, a key concern for the Department of Defense, but also just our country in general. And so recycling used nuclear waste into fuel for our fast reactors is our next project. Well, among many in the fire right now. So that $2 million is $1 million from Oklo and $1 million from Department of Energy, going straight to Argonne National Labs for work on that. And I see it as almost like a continuation of many other littler projects that we've done with DOE. I mean, in addition to the fuel and the siting and other things, called gain voucher projects, which we were able to get awards from DOE for funding to go to national labs for really key topics, often cross-cutting topics. So we've done work in open source modeling work, we've done fuel fabrication, we've done thermal testing work over the years between 2016 and now, utilizing those. So we are big fans of collaboration of those kinds of voucher programs, even as we're fully privately funded, and believe strongly that you don't have to take taxpayer funding in order to make progress quickly.
Caroline, thank you so much. And thank you also for mentioning just the importance of cooperation between the private sector and the national laboratories. And Jeff, thank you as well for mentioning the importance of a strong US civil nuclear export program. We could do a whole other program just on that, and we would probably invite Joyce to keynote. But anyways, I want to stay on that theme and go to you, Dale, because we spent a lot of time talking about the role of nuclear energy in reaching net zero. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact that reaching net zero by 2050 needs to be a global project. We're expecting both an increase in global energy demand, as well as an increase, perhaps even a tripling of the global nuclear energy market. So how does a company like yours position itself to meet that demand?
Yeah, thank you. It is a huge challenge, I think, for our country and for the world to get to that level of carbon-free power generation on the timeline we're talking about. And we don't see a way to get there without advanced nuclear. I just don't think it's possible. We've taken a look at the market globally. We estimate that market to be over $100 billion by 2035. And we think that'll provide remarkable benefits for the United States and the global economy as we proceed forward. And so fundamentally, we believe that the technology developed here in the United States goes well beyond our borders and facilitates this transition to carbon-free power all over the globe. And we see it in the global energy demand growth. In addition to our first customer, Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems and their carbon-free power project located out the Idaho National Laboratories, we've signed memorandum of understanding with numerous other utilities and frankly countries to look at deployment of our SMR technology right now in over 11 countries. Quite a lot of activity there domestically and internationally. We also took a huge step last August, when we completed our review with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and had our design approved. It is the first and only SMR to be approved in the regulatory world here. And we're excited to continue even improvements on that and that deployment. We've also secured quite a few partnerships, strategic partnerships with suppliers to help us deploy the technology. Just last week, we finalized investment and strategic partner agreements with Korean-based Doosan Heavy Industries in construction and Samsung. So these are significant heavy hitters in the industrial world, and we see a lot coming from that. We're also spending quite a lot of time on manufacturing trials. So I know as a nuclear engineer, it was always cool to look at the the nuclear technology and the reactor core and how that functions. And frankly, it's been pretty neat here too. But in order to actually deploy, there's so much you have to do. And so we put quite a lot into manufacturing trials and built a lot of things out of steel, supported manufacturers who needed to do prototypical manufacturing and perfect their process. And that's happening in the US and frankly around the globe. Our technology program is frankly pretty mature. Our focus now is on really readying our technology in manufacturing and construction. To that extent, we've spent a fair bit of money and are continuing to complete what we call a standard plant design. That design should be quite adaptable to a lot of locations, and we think it will help new owners expedite their design and construction process and their licensing process. We also look, about this impact, and right now, just from NuScale, we're projecting about 13,500 direct jobs from the manufacturing part of the business, and about 2 billion in direct and indirect benefits from manufacturing and construction of each facility. So that typically goes to a lot of labor in the area and then a lot of suppliers, obviously. So basically, together with our NRC approved design, the development of the supply chain, testing real components out there, and the progress of the carbon-free power project, we're poised to deliver near-term projects. But we're really excited for what's ahead, both for us and frankly, everyone, as we work hard to solve this global issue about carbon control, frankly.
Dale, thank you so much. And again, I want to stay on this topic of US civil nuclear exports because, again, I think it's just so important. And Chris, I want to turn to you and ask, as we think through the links between nuclear energy and national security, could you speak a little bit to the importance of US global leadership in civil nuclear technologies?
Thank you, Jennifer. I think I would go back to maybe where we started this discussion with Joyce, and she mentioned the impacts of climate change, both on future conflicts and, future conflicts and what that will mean. So the more nuclear exports that we can provide, the more jobs that we can create here in the U.S., the better we'll do at alleviating that future climate change. And then the second point is really the history of nuclear power and civilian nuclear power comes from the military. Through the shipping port demonstration back in the 50s, we showed that we could use that technology, and we've exported that technology across the world. And really that enabled two things. We set the gold standard for safety across the world. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the NRC setting those standards is really important and been a really important part of having a safe civilian nuclear fleet. And then the second part is proliferation standards. So, these reactors are going to be built around the world. The question is whether they will be built by US manufacturers or whether they'll be built by countries like China and Russia. These plants come with long strategic relationships. So when a plant lasts 60 or 80 years, that's a 60 or 80-year relationship, but either with the US or with another country, and how that impacts the global market and the future example. So just look at Turkey. Right now there's a Russian plant that's going to be built there in Turkey, and that creates a long strategic relationship. So I think there's a number of impacts and ways that nuclear can support both our kind of overall global security message from the US And I think that's part of why you see the support from places like the DOE and others.
Chris, thank you so much. I want to also go back to where we started this conversation with Joyce's remarks. And I want to go back to this idea of the role of the nuclear energy industry in providing civilian jobs for veterans. And I know that each of you probably has a lot to say. I know some of you have already hinted at this in your remarks throughout the discussion, but I want to give everyone just a quick chance to speak their mind and just talk about what you or your company, what you're doing on these issues. So I'm going to call on everyone in succession again, and we'll go from there. So Bentina, I want to start with you.
Yeah, so Georgia Power Southern Company has a great deal of respect and regard for people who've served in the military. And so with the Vogtle site having more than 7,000 workers on site now, more than 800 permanent jobs available when those units begin operating, Vogtle 3 and 4 are currently the largest jobs producing construction site in the state of Georgia. And the project, of course, has been an economic development driver for the region during construction. So as I stated, we've got a long tradition of hiring and being military friendly. About 11% of our new hires are veterans, and 8.5% of our workforce is comprised of veterans. We have a awesome ERG, Military Vets in Power Employee Resource Group, and they do a phenomenal job providing programming and support to our veterans across the workplace. So just suffice it to say that there's a lot of awards that they've got written down here that I'm supposed to tell y'all we've received for being a military friendly veteran. But just believe us, we rank second out of 290 employers on the 2020 military friendly employers list. And so I know that we love having veterans working for us at Southern Company at Georgia Power, and we welcome them looking to us and us being their employer of choice.
Bentina, thank you so much. Marilyn, I want to go to you.
Yeah, and so to the audience, I'm sure you hear it all the time, but thank you for your service. And echoing what you heard in Joyce's opening remarks, she did such an eloquent job. I don't know that I could repeat that, but I can expand on it and just say that absolutely, I see that the nuclear community has a shared sense of duty as well as purpose with the military personnel, and you will fit in. And there will be instances when there are some different culturals, but I think at the bottom line, we recognize and will reward your technical and your leadership skills. And if you're thinking, well, or somehow intimidated at all by working in the nuclear industry, if you're not in it in the nuclear Navy, then we train. All of us train. So if you come in with skills, fantastic. But we have comprehensive training programs, so we can handle that. Whether you come to the current fleet that Bentina and I represent, I see the current fleet as that bridge to the future of the four that you have there. To sustain certainly that pipeline of the human resources that we need to continue to operate our fleet, and then usher in the new ones that you've heard about as well. So we will compete amongst each other for you, but you're most welcome.
Marilyn, thank you. Jeff, I want to go to you.
Yes, I'll join Marilyn saying thanks for your service as well. Jennifer, you mentioned a sense of urgency earlier, and we definitely have a sense of urgency in this area that we're discussing here. As you know, we talked about we're shooting for deployment in both our XE100 and our XE1 this decade. So today, as we speak, we've got 53 open positions that we need to fill, and immediately. Early days in the industry was largely about nuclear Navy talent, skills, built really, in my opinion, built this industry. But now, we've progressed, and yes, we need nuclear Navy folks as well, but we also need all other skills: leadership, project management, logistics, just to name a few. If you have any of those skills, we would love to talk to you actually sooner than later.
Jeff, thank you so much. Caroline.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, well, first of all, Oklo is hiring. Second of all, I think there's some interesting parallels for those coming from the military because we are a small, tight knit team, very much values focused, working on a certain mission. And one of the things we are really excited about is how we can bring resiliency to the grid. And we know that that's going to have intersections with the needs that Department of Defense has, let alone the rest of the country. So I think like take a look at our job offerings on LinkedIn or other places. And I think, for the kind of person who likes a startup atmosphere, who likes being scrappy, we're a really good fit for that too. So thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. And I want to go for the last word to our two veterans. So Dale, over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so at NewScale, roughly a quarter of our employees are veterans, and we are also, like many others have stated, actively hiring. I just approved an offer a couple days ago to another vet. But I also remember making that transition, and I hope you appreciate how much skill you have to offer and bring. The level of initiative and accountability, integrity, the toughness, just the hours that you're probably used to working, learning that you get paid for overtime. That was a big shocker to me, I remember. But in any case, you have a lot to offer. And frankly, as you can tell, I think all of us would be delighted to hire more vets. We also have a relationship with the labor unions out there as well. And so we typically represent about 1,200 construction jobs for a construction project. And in fact, Fluor Corporation, our primary investor, has executed a memorandum of understanding with the North American Building Trades Union for construction of NewScale plants in this country. There's just a lot of opportunity out there. There was a discussion earlier about the different, I'll say, goals or cultures at the different companies. But I will offer you, we really are singularly focused on our role to deliver power for all humankind and to reestablish U.S. leadership in nuclear technology. And both veterans and trade workers have the skills necessary to help us get there from here. So to all of you, I really do encourage you to explore your options, and I think you'll find NewScale, like all the other people I think on this, would be delighted to have you. And I thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion and look forward to your interest in advancing nuclear technology and with all of its benefits and opportunities. Thank you, Jennifer.
Dale, thank you so much. And last but not least, over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Jennifer. Terrapower is, like a lot of nuclear organizations, filled with nuclear or former Navy and other military veterans. Myself, of course, our CEO. But it's not just Navy. We hired our own Army person the other day. I did in my group. So we're equal opportunity here. And I would encourage you, as Jeff said, we're building a demonstration. We're looking at 2027 to complete that. And to do that means we're staffing up as well. We'll grow substantially, but at the same time, we do have a small team environment. When Bill Gates founded Terrapower just over 10 years ago, it was really a mission-driven purpose to both combat climate change and also alleviate global energy poverty. And so I think you'll find that kind of mission-driven sense is really permeates throughout the Terrapower culture. And really, we understand the types of jobs and roles that military personnel have done in the past, and really how we can translate that to the roles we have here at Terrapower.
Chris, thank you so much. And I am not going to go anywhere near that Army Navy thing. So I think you said that. No, that's fine. Anyways, this has been just a fantastic conversation. It's been so much fun. And I want to thank you all for joining us for this important and productive discussion during the Atlantic Council's Veterans Advanced Energy Week. Thank you so much to our amazing panelists and to our keynote speaker for being here to share all of your perspectives. To our audience, if you would like to rewatch today's event or share the stream with a colleague, A cached replay will be available on the Atlantic Council YouTube channel and also on our social media platforms. Coming up next in our conference program, after this at 6 p.m. Eastern, please make sure to tune in for a series of advanced energy policy presentations hosted by our very own Veterans Advanced Energy Fellows as they discuss key issues from current-based hydrokinetic energy to mineral supply chains to port decarbonization. So wide range of topics. You can also read about them on the Atlantic Council website. And I'm really excited about this upcoming session. I will certainly be listening in, and I hope you can all join me. Thank you all again, and I hope to see you all again, hopefully in person soon.